My brother Vincent announced to the bankruptcy courtroom, "We're finally shutting down your embarrassing little business," straightening his tie with the confidence of someone who assumed victory. My parents nodded from the gallery, my mother wiping staged tears, while my father kept a rigid, judgmental expression. I stood at the defendant's table in silence, letting their lawyer present the fabricated petition, waiting for the moment that would overturn everything they believed. Then Judge Margaret Holloway paused mid-sentence, her pen hovering above the documents, eyes widening as she read the company name. Counsel approached the bench, and both lawyers followed. The judge spoke in a low, firm whisper. "Is this the same Apex Defense Systems that secured the $189 million Department of Defense contract? The one featured in the Wall Street Journal?" Vincent's lawyer muttered something unclear. Judge Holloway looked at me, her expression shifting from disbelief to controlled frustration. "I'll need extensive documentation before proceeding, because either this is the most careless filing I've seen in 30 years, or someone is attempting fraud in my courtroom." Vincent's confident expression faltered. "I founded Apex Defense Systems 8 years earlier in a garage with $3,000. The Moretti family didn't do garages. We did image. My father, Antonio Moretti, owned a successful luxury car dealership chain. Vincent was being prepared to inherit it. My younger sister Carla married into wealth and spent her time on charity boards. I, Gabriella, the middle child in supposed disappointment, left a Wharton business degree behind to pursue what my father dismissed as playing with electronics, cybersecurity. He criticized my plans. That's a job, not a business. Get a real career. Work for a bank. Defense technology may look promising, but you're 24 and know nothing about building companies. You'll fail and expect us to fix it." I refused to seek his approval again. The first 5 years were difficult. I lived on ramen and coffee, worked long days, and learned the defense contracting industry through trial and error. I survived poor partnerships, missed deadlines, and a contract dispute that nearly wiped out my savings. My family watched from a distance, waiting for the failure they expected. "Still playing with computers?" Vincent would ask during holidays. "Still working on your hobby?" my father added. My mother's muth, "We worry about you," meant, "We're embarrassed." I stopped attending after year 3 and used my energy to build my business. Apex Defense Systems created cybersecurity protocols for military communication networks that identified and blocked intrusion attempts within milliseconds. We secured our first government contract in year 4 and another in year 5. By year 7, we had 47 employees, $12 million in annual revenue, and recognition as a leading defense technology startup. 6 weeks ago, we received an $89 million Department of Defense contract to implement our technology across 3 military branches, a deal that would elevate Apex from a strong startup to a major contractor. The Wall Street Journal published a feature. Industry publications profiled our work. Investors reached out. My family knew none of this. I used my married name, Gabriela Santos, in public. A few relatives saw news about Apex Defense Systems, but none connected G. Santos, CEO, to the daughter they dismissed. I preferred it that way. I didn't need their approval, though apparently I still had to manage their interference. The bankruptcy petition arrived 3 weeks after the contract announcement. Vincent claimed Apex Defense Systems owed him $2 million from an investment he allegedly made in year 2. The filing claimed I defaulted, that the company was insolvent, and that creditors needed protection. None of it was true. Vincent never invested anything. He never showed interest beyond mockery. The documents were fabricated. Contracts I never signed, loan agreements I'd never seen, and financial statements with no connection to reality. It was clear fraud, the sort that could damage a company by tying up assets, alarming investors, and threatening government contracts that required financial stability. I called my lawyer immediately. After reviewing the filing, she said, "They're attempting to force you into bankruptcy using forged documents. Any forensic review will expose it quickly, but the filing alone creates delays that could affect the DoD contract." That was the intention. Vincent sensed I had something significant happening and tried to interfere. "How would he know?" she asked. My mother's cousin worked at a firm handling some compliance filings. She likely saw something and repeated it at a family gathering. They don't understand what I've built, I said. They just heard I have a government contract and decided to intervene. Why sabotage your success? She asked. Because it proves they misjudged me, and some people can't accept that. The court date was set for a Thursday morning. I arrived early in the professional, understated style I preferred, polished without being showy. My lawyer, Patricia Acuno, joined me with 3 boxes of documents proving Apex's financial stability. Vincent arrived with our parents, making an entrance designed for effect. He wore a tailored suit from his dealership promotions. My mother dressed as if attending a memorial. My father appeared stern, carrying the posture of someone defending family reputation. They didn't acknowledge me. I was treated as a problem, not a relative. Finally facing consequences? Vincent told his lawyer loudly. Should have happened years ago. A few spectators, court regulars, a bankruptcy journalist, and people waiting for later cases sat in the gallery, unaware of what was coming. Judge Holloway entered. I'd researched her 30-year record, thorough, direct, and unwilling to tolerate misconduct. If anyone would identify Vincent's fraud immediately, it was her. The proceedings began with Vincent's lawyer presenting the petition, outlining the alleged debt, default, and need for court involvement. Your Honor, the defendant has avoided repayment of a substantial family loan, choosing to fund an unprofitable venture with no financial viability. Judge Holloway lifted her hand. Apex Defense Systems, based in Alexandria, Virginia? Yes, Your Honor. She checked something on her computer, typed briefly, then stopped. She called the lawyers to the bench. The discussion lasted several minutes. I watched Vincent's confidence diminish. His lawyer's face lost color. My father leaned in, trying to hear, his expression shifting. Judge Holloway finally addressed the room. We will recess for 30 minutes. Both parties should prepare full documentation of their positions. Counsel for the petitioner, verify every document you submitted. If I find fraudulent filings, the consequences will be severe. Her gavel fell. Vincent hurried to his lawyer. What's happening? What did she say? During the recess, Patricia and I organized our materials. Accurate financial statements showing $12 million in revenue and strong reserves. The DoD contract, redacted but authentic. Investor letters, tax returns, audit reports, 8 years of legitimate records, plus forensic findings showing Vincent's documents were created 6 days earlier. Metadata confirmed the fraud. Signatures were poorly forged. Financial numbers were invented. Judge Holloway returned. I conducted preliminary research, she said. Apex Defense Systems is not failing. It appears to be a successful defense contractor that recently secured one of the largest cybersecurity contracts this fiscal year. She faced Vincent's lawyer. Would you like to explain why you filed a bankruptcy petition against a financially stable company? He shuffled papers. Your Honor, my client provided documentation of a debt, documentation that appears inconsistent with public filings. Judge Holloway turned to me. Miss Santos, or Miss Moretti, since the petitioner is your brother, would you like to respond to these allegations? I stood. Your Honor, there is no debt, no investment, and every document submitted by the petitioner is fabricated. My brother has never been connected to Apex Defense Systems in any role. He filed this petition to undermine my company because my achievements bother him. When the judge noted the seriousness of the claim, I confirmed I had substantial evidence. Patricia handed out our documentation, accurate financial statements prepared by certified accountants and verified through annual audits. A forensic report showing the petitioner's documents were created less than a week ago using templates that do not match standard business contracts. And a timeline of my brother's public remarks about my company over 8 years, showing a clear pattern of dismissal and hostility. Vincent stood up, insisting he had every right to collect a debt, but when I asked him to identify the date of the alleged loan, the account it came from, or any proof that withstands scrutiny, he could not provide anything, because no such evidence existed. The courtroom stayed silent as Judge Holloway reviewed the materials for 20 minutes. Even Vincent's attorney seemed to regret being involved. My parents, who had been quietly supporting him, began to realize the situation was not unfolding as they expected. The judge finally concluded that the forensic analysis was convincing, confirming the petitioner's documents were recently created and inconsistent with his claims. Our financial records showed no debt owed to Vincent, and she dismissed the petition. She then informed him that filing a fraudulent bankruptcy petition is a federal offense and referred the matter to the U.S. Attorney's Office for possible charges, including perjury and fraud. When Vincent tried to explain, the judge made it clear that he had submitted forged documents and attempted to misuse the system to push a stable company into bankruptcy. She also noted that interfering with a Department of Defense contractor could involve additional federal consequences, since Apex provides critical cybersecurity infrastructure to the U.S. military. Before ending the hearing, she apologized to me for the waste of time and assured me the record would reflect the fraudulent nature of the filing. After the dismissal, officers approached Vincent and his lawyer regarding the criminal referral. My parents tried to leave quietly, but I stopped them long enough to ask if they had known. They tried to shift responsibility, claiming they thought they were helping and believed Vincent's negative claims about the company. I reminded them that the $89 million contract was real. The 47 employees relying on Apex were real, and the technology supporting American soldiers was real. I made it clear I was finished. Whatever legal trouble Vincent faced was his own doing, and whatever my parents needed to believe was their concern, but they were no longer part of my life. I left the courthouse and didn't look back. The federal investigation progressed quickly. Vincent's lawyer, trying to protect his license, cooperated and disclosed that Vincent had pitched the scheme as a way to shut down what he called a failing company before it embarrassed the family. The lawyer admitted he had trusted Vincent's claims without proper verification, but the central fraud was Vincent's. Within 6 weeks, charges were filed: bankruptcy fraud, perjury, and attempted interference with a government contractor. Vincent was facing potentially 15 years in federal prison. My father used contacts and money to secure a plea deal, reducing the sentence to 3 years in a minimum security facility. Vincent lost his role in the family business and would live with a felony conviction permanently. The dealership chain survived, but the reputational damage forced my father to step back from day-to-day operations, since clients were wary of associating with him. Last I heard, he was working in a consulting capacity while younger managers handled the business. 6 months after the trial, my mother sent a letter full of explanations and indirect apologies, asking for forgiveness and urging me to understand their perspective. I chose not to reply. Meanwhile, Apex Defense Systems marked its 10th anniversary. We expanded to 156 employees, secured $340 million in Department of Defense contracts over the next 5 years, opened a second facility in Colorado, and began planning a third in Texas. A Wall Street Journal follow-up story titled, "The Defense Startup That Survived a Family Sabotage Attempt Revisited the Bankruptcy Case," and I gave one interview focusing on legal lessons rather than personal conflict. When asked why my brother had done it, I said some people struggle to admit when they're wrong and would rather tear down something successful than confront their own misjudgments. When asked about my family relationships, I explained that I have a strong bond with the family I built, my employees, partners, and husband, and that my biological family made their choices, and I made mine. The interview ended there, because some questions do not need further explanation. A week ago, my sister Carla wrote to me. She had always been somewhat detached from the family dynamics, more concerned with her social status, but the scandal had affected her standing. Her letter was a partial apology mixed with self-interest, positioning herself as someone who had quietly supported me. I replied with a single line: "Support withheld when it matters is simply complicity," but I thanked her for writing. I meant it. I didn't forgive her, but I acknowledged the effort. My daughter Elena was born 3 months ago, named after my grandmother, the only Moretti who believed in me from the beginning. I hold her in the nursery of the home I bought with my own work, far removed from the family that tried to undermine me. I tell her about resilience, determination, and the importance of building things that serve a purpose. I explain the difference between people who encourage your growth and those who need you small. I told her, even though she is too young to understand, that her grandparents will not be part of her life, not as punishment, but as protection. She deserves to be surrounded by people who see potential, not people who depend on her failure. I put her in her crib and watched her rest, knowing she will grow up with the family that chose her mother, not the one that rejected her. They pushed me into bankruptcy court, believing they would finally prove I was the failure they always claimed. Instead, they exposed themselves as frauds in every sense. The judge recognized my company because we built something credible, valuable, and worth defending. They thought they were ending an embarrassment. In reality, they attempted to dismantle an $89 million success story. That courtroom wasn't their victory, it was their unveiling. And now, with Vincent serving his sentence and my parents fading from relevance, Apex Defense Systems continues to expand, continues to deliver, and continues to demonstrate that personal determination outmatches family doubt every time.